So that was my horrific crime against humanity. I thought the taxpayers who paid for the report ought to read it so they know what their money was going to be used for.
Yeah, I try to read all of these reports, like the Homeland Security's assessment, the FBI's guide to right-wing extremists, the ADL's armed and dangerous, and I've been mentioned in most of those.
That's what I was going to say. You're reading those, and you probably come across your name. You know, I didn't even know until just here, like 2 days ago, somebody emailed me and they said, hey, the senior editor for Forcing Change magazine, Carl Tykreb, his feature article this month is titled The Rise of Techno-Gods, the Merging of Transhumanism and Spirituality. But he said he goes into quite a bit of information in there. He just had attended the Transhumanism and Spirituality conference that was hosted at the University of Utah, and I guess I was cannon fodder for a lot of that transhumanism and spirituality conference there a few weeks ago. They mentioned me by name several times and referred to me as as an enemy and all these kind of things. So after I found out about it, I read the article for myself, and he specifically mentioned James Hughes, whom I know. Hughes is one of the world's leading transhumanist leaders.
All right, let me stop you for just a moment here, because you're actually using a word that I am not familiar with, and I read quite a bit. Transhumanism. Give me an explanation of that.
Yeah, transhumanism is a very, well, now, first of all, you could say that it is related to very ancient times, the times of Gilgamesh, when men wanted to become a god. You could also relate it to, the Enlightenment era, where people began to view technology as being superior to the prophets. But when I use the term transhumanism, I'm talking about a modern cultural movement, and in very plain language, what they imagine is using emerging fields of technology, especially the genetic sciences, to change our DNA, to reconstruct our biological makeup into a new superior man. And so it's an echo of Nazi Germany's eugenics, the pursuit of the Übermensch, the pursuit, of Nietzsche's Overman to create a superior man, except that now the transhumans imagine that we now have we've got the technology, recombinant DNA technologies, transgenics, genetic re-engineering.
Is it possible? I chuckled there, because Gilgamesh is a character in one of my short stories, which I'm about to turn into a full-length series of novels.
Oh.
And he's buddies with Lucifer, who's the co-captain of the Atlantean Earth ship Heaven. So, just taking a little different. I take a little different look at things. I've been reading Isaac Asimov, Robert A. Heinlein most of my life, and started writing about it. But is it possible? Is it possible? The character that I call Lucifer in my novel is a superior human being. His DNA has been altered 5,000 years ago, or 10,000 years ago, and his kind, the Atlanteans, are viewed as gods by the normal and the rest of the humans on the planet.
Yeah.
Any possibility my fiction is touching on some kind of reality?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, if a person goes to our website, Forbidden Gate, singular, not plural, forbiddengate.com, they can pull down the pages there, right where you were reading that quote a moment ago about Tom Horn being an extremist pig, and they'll see government reports that we put on there in PDF format. People can right-click and save those to their computer and read for themselves. Where, for instance, just 6 weeks ago, the U.S. National Intelligence Council, working with European intelligence, produced a document called Global Governance 2025 at Critical Juncture. And what this U.S. intelligence and European intelligence report is about is they're talking about what might be the trigger events, what might be the causal agents that could set in motion the need for global government. And I think it's on page 35, but they start talking about biotechnology and new versions of humanity. They call them redesigned humans with unique physical, emotional, and cognitive abilities that have been altered genetically, and how that this could set in motion an arms race, a kind of Terminator arms race, if you will, that then could put pressures upon humanity as these things become, an unprecedented lethal force. What if they turn on us? All of a sudden we could be in a situation where there's a need for global government basically to protect us from these godlike beings. And if anybody thinks that this is complete fiction, or that there is no possibility that this could ever happen, the seriousness of it for the very conceivable future within the next decade is significant enough that there was a recent House Foreign Affairs Committee hearing in California, chaired by California Democrat Brad Sherman, and he was picked because of his expertise on the spread of nuclear weapons and terrorism. But in this case, they were talking about the implications of genetically modified humans related to future terrorism. And in fact, Congressional Quarterly columnist Mark Stenzel attended those HFA hearings, and afterward came back and he wrote an article for Congressional Quarterly called Futurists, Genes Without Borders. So if somebody wants to Google this and read it for themselves, to make sure Tom Horn's not making this up, Futurists, Genes Without Borders, that was the name of the article, in which he says that the HFA hearing sounded more like a Hollywood pitch for a sci-fi thriller than a sober discussion of scientific reality, with talk of biotech's potential for creating super soldiers, super intelligence, and super animals that could become agents of unprecedented lethal force within the next decade. And so...
Sounds like a description of the Nephilim, doesn't it?
Well, it sounds like our version of the Nephilim, that's right.
Yep.
And academic scientists, technical consultants to the Pentagon are saying the same thing. They're saying that the United States could literally be forced into large-scale species-altering output, including human enhancement for military purposes, within the next decade. And guess where that's coming from? That's coming from the Jasons, the highest think tank, the most celebrated think tank in our intelligence communities, to the Pentagon, as a result of what they believe is already being developed, for instance, by China. And what they're saying is we can't allow these other nations, our potential enemies, to get ahead of us in this research, because if they do, they then could use it to dominate us on the battlefield or subjugate us to their will. And that was actually based on a leaked military report that Wired magazine got a copy of just a few months ago, and they wrote an article, here again can be Googled, an article called Top Pentagon Scientists Fear Brain-Modified Foes. And they take excerpts right out of this leaked document. But I'll tell you something, I personally think that document was intentionally leaked, and probably by the Pentagon to some of their contacts at Wired magazine, because I think that what is coming, the human enhancement revolution is coming. It'll probably begin in earnest. Well, two different government documents say anytime after the year 2012, all bets are off. And these are based on United States National Science Foundation and Department of Commerce Commission reports. All bets are off. They're saying that the first baby steps, if you will, in true human genetic alteration are going to start anytime after the year 2012, but it is going to accelerate exponentially, and within just a few years we will be in the middle of the human enhancement revolution. And so what the Jasons are saying to the Pentagon is there's going to be a militarized aspect of this, and I think they leaked the document to Wired because I think it's part of a public education campaign. I think they want the public to start learning about this reality, and in that sense, I guess, even I am being used as a tool by the government to make the public aware of what is coming, because at some point they certainly have to start, using information.
Well, now they have been doing that for years. Hollywood is educating you, the American people, on the idea that there may be people from other worlds out there. And,
Right.
I've always said